All right, welcome back. We made it, KM, episode 2.
Hey Josh, how are you, mate?
Good, mate. It means we're consistent. I know you brought your own podcast mic, which you weren't able to set up, but I think we're becoming more and more professional as each episode passes. So that's a good thing, right?
Hopefully the quality's a bit better because we get a
Well, I
couple of
think
comments that
episode
I'm
1,
getting cut off.
correct. Episode 1, you sounded like you were in a tin shed, so hopefully we can get a bit of an uplift. It won't be as much a strain on the ears for our listeners. So welcome back, episode 2. Obviously, the first one was really talking about the charter, why we're here, a little bit of banter along the way, but really trying to set the stage in terms of what we're trying to achieve with this podcast. It's really designed for men who want to get their life back on track. You're looking for straight up practical advice, whether you're dealing with breakups, life reset, or you have that that gut level feel that your relationship's starting to drift off course. And we're really here taking you through on how to recalibrate some of your life. So it's really for us, I think, KM, and jump in. But for me, it's just about making sure that we're having, this is not about lecturing anyone. We're not after any sort of hype. We just want to have honest conversations. We want to give blokes clear tools, real world guidance, and really helping them to step up and clean up their lives, move forward with a bit of clarity, bit of strength. And the focus on this episode, which I'm really looking forward to, we're sort of moving away from sort of the theory. This is all about providing a bit of a field guide, some triage for blokes, and really breaking down those exact steps on how to deal with those first 30 days of separation, how to stop the bleed, how to stabilise fast. So we're going to cover off stuff like, all the legal aspects of separation, financial, how to get your mindset right, how to get your health right. What do you do with the kids when they're caught up in the middle? So a bit of a survival guide. But at the end of this podcast, really, for me, it's about giving blokes a bit of a game plan on how to move forward for that next 30 days. What about for you, KM? What's in it from yours?
This just sounds like like you said, it's just a triage. Like this is just scratching the surface of each of the things that you've got to consider. But it's going to be something that someone can quickly get their head around. Okay, here's the major things I've got to get to, and presumably we'll dig down deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think really, for us, I think, and we touched on this in the first episode, we really want to provide care and triage and support for those that are in most need. So really the guys that need urgent care. And then as we get through that, we're going to look at some of those more proactive, preventative strategies for people that are considering, or even younger guys that are probably going down the wrong path that need a bit of recalibration along the way. Hopefully we want to set guys up in an environment, living their life in a particular way that sort of doesn't or helps to support them. So a lot of these things don't come their way, right? So yeah,
or they may find they live a better life with the person they're married to as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is not about hey, the only way out's separate.
100%. You might find for our listeners, you might find a little bit of dark humor along the way. We believe that the best way to get through tough situations is with a bit of grace, with a bit of humor. Expect a little bit of dark humor along the way as we move through these sensitive topics. And really, we want to make sure we lighten it up with a little bit of banter along the way. So in terms of, what's currently out there going on in the world. And with that note, how was your Mother's Day?
Oh, Mother's Day was good.
Yeah.
Actually. Yeah. Rainy here in Sydney, but my wife went off to my daughter's soccer, which was good, and caught up with my mum, one of the local pubs, and my sister and things like that. It was great afternoon. And then went and saw Les Miserables.
Ah, lovely.
Yeah.
Was that a surprise for
that was a surprise for my wife, and because she commented on it before, got lucky. If you can get lucky where they actually say something that they want.
Oh yeah,
The lead up,
yeah,
literally it was in the lead up, so
yeah.
perfect.
Oh,
And it was their closing night. So
oh,
well done to the Les Miserables cast.
yes. Oh, very good, very good.
Yeah, what about you, mate?
So yeah, we did the usual dinners, lunches, a bit of spoils, coffees, cakes, all that. My wife enjoys to be fed and caffeinated wherever possible. My gifts were a bit more practical. She keeps bugging me on the technology side, so I got a whole bunch of MagSafe stuff. Or my son did. It was his. It's his mum.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
So my son reached into his pockets and and got her out some MagSafe stuff. So she was actually very pleased with it. So I think I hit the mark because she keeps bugging me for my stuff all the time, and her phone keeps running out. So that was a good thing. And then with my actual mother,
Mm.
we just went out for dinner as a family. I'm one of seven, so we're a large Catholic tribe. Hence the seven kids. And yeah, so we normally book out half the restaurant when we catch up because our immediate family's pretty large. And then it's a competition each year about, who can make mum cry with a
Oh,
card.
perfect.
I've done okay, but in the last couple of years, I failed to bring my mum to that sort of emotional state that I was hoping for. My brother, he's really hit it hard last couple of years, and but no, nothing last couple of years. I try. I keep.
Can I just ask, is that you're making a cry from joy, from laughter, or from misery?
It's probably. I think from joy, but
Shame.
I think most of my life I've disappointed my mother. Yeah,
Yeah.
but in the last 10 years, I've tried to make a bit of a recovery. But I know I've given her hell over the years. So I think a lot of those tears are out of misery, but I'm slowly trying to convert them to tears of joy. So there you
Excellent.
go. Election.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Albo's back.
Yep.
Thoughts around that?
Look, he's got the mandate.
He's got.
Let's see what he can do. I did see something about there wasn't too much difference between their primary votes, Labor
Mm,
and Liberal,
yes.
surprisingly. 34, 32, but you might be able to
Not
check that.
reflected in the seats, though. The seats, it looks like a murder session, doesn't it? But when you look at the primary, it sort of reflects a little bit differently.
Yeah, so it's all those other parties, the independents and the rest giving preferences, and that's the way it worked out. Or that, sorry, it's the other parties, or it's the individual voter who gives their preferences. So yeah, Australia's voted. We move on, and let's
Another
see.
democracy sausage.
Let's see. Yeah, where we go to from here.
Mm,
Um,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
grand plans.
100%. I was always, I find, this election, like other elections, are people, voting towards something or away from something. And for
Mm,
me, it felt like with Albo's been uh, a little bit on the nose, I would say,
mm,
from some what it was being reflected in the media. But whether when people went to the polls, they were actually voting towards Albo or just away from Dutton. It felt like they were voting away from Dutton, and then Albo was able to sort of scoop up the win. As a result, I think it was the Libs' election to lose. It felt like,
mm,
but that's where we are.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, not too much. You can't cry about spilt milk, and
No, absolutely.
Australia voted the way it voted, and yeah, let's get on with it, and yeah, wish him the best. Let's see the policies.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's hook in. Like I said, we've got a fair bit to cover. This is all about triage. This is about what men who have recently separated should be focusing on, clear actionable steps for the next 30 days. I think if we could just break these down topic by topic, I think let's look at the legal aspects first.
Mm,
One of the big questions that come up, I know I can reflect on this in my own personal situation. And I know you've got blokes around you in similar situations. The first thing I want to talk about is the housing arrangements for guys that have just separated. And the big
mm,
question is always, do you stay or do you go?
Mm.
And what does that mean? And I think the message, certainly from me, and I think it'll resonate with you as well, is it's a bigger decision than most blokes think, and it has a lot of impact in other areas, in terms of down the road.
Mm.
That could be financial impacts, that could be legal aspects, it could be custody aspects. All of these things play into that first decision. What's your thoughts around that?
I was thinking that if you're in that process, and I guess it's different if you don't have kids, do have kids. That'd
Mm-hmm.
be number one thought. Um, but there's still this decision. You're in both camps to start with, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
originally living together, and then at some point, this decision comes, and it's whether you do it quickly from a rip off a band-aid type scenario. I know some guys do that, and then there's others that, there's a lot to consider. The one about you say custody, but it's also about spending time with the kids, like that fear that you're not going to spend as much time with them as what you have
Mm.
in the past. You're used to waking up with them every day. You're used to being there when you put them to bed. So those things are huge. And to be honest, I don't know much about the legal impacts. I really don't know, and I'm sure no one's really thought this through until they're there.
Yeah.
So, and everyone is in that discovery mode
Mm.
for the first time, usually.
Mm.
So for me, yeah, it's very, very tricky. And I guess some people stay in the same house and have that agreement, or I guess so.
Mm.
Either husband or wife moves out, so I guess
Mm.
that's a condition. Or where do the kids go, or do you split the kids, and
Uh,
how old they are, and there's just so many
Absolutely,
combinations.
absolutely. One of the things, and I think from my own experience of sort of going through this many years ago, is that I think from a parenting perspective, if you do decide to leave the home,
Mm,
you're sending some clear signals, right? Those signals are around who is the primary carer.
okay.
Okay, so that's really important, because when you're starting to talk about definitions, when you start to talk about custody arrangements and access, you
Mm,
are actually, when you leave the house, you are starting to establish those definitions. So by default, when you leave the house,
yeah.
you're essentially handing over that primary carer role to
Hmm.
the other person. Inevitably, that also leads to less time with the kids. Of course, you've left the
Hmm.
house, so you're going to see the kids less. The reality is that also, once men leave the house, they're going to see their kids less than 50% of the time.
Mm,
And that's just the statistical reality of
okay.
things, yeah.
Is that even if you get some court order down the track where it's
Well, you can get a court order down the track, I think, and you can obviously go through that process. It's a long process.
mm,
The family law court is a long, lengthy process. And, you've got a couple of processes. If you've got parenting orders, you can get interim parenting orders, and then you will eventually go to final parenting orders. Interim orders still takes a long time,
oh,
right?
okay.
And also, you need to understand that once you leave and you've sort of set the stage in terms of the day-to-day access, you're kind of putting in informal arrangements in place. And courts tend not to want to disturb that.
Okay.
So even if you've got an interim arrangement in place, if you
Mm,
do that for long enough and it takes you 12 months to get to court,
mm.
the courts generally don't want to turn that upside down, because they're looking at the best interests of the children,
So
right?
is that something that you just could draft up, you know, and then have your counterpart or
Yeah,
your
absolutely.
spouse
So
to sign off on?
yeah, definitely. But it's most people aren't doing that, KM.
Yeah,
Do you know
yeah,
what I mean? Like, most people are just they're not putting these things in place. So
yeah.
I guess the key message for this is that if you do consider
Mm,
leaving the home, you need to remember it's going to cause potential issues with you in terms of primary care arrangements, custody arrangements. If you've got a mortgage,
mm.
you're still responsible for that mortgage. You still need to look at the costs of alternative housing arrangements.
Yep.
That can double your costs. So now you're seeing your kids less. you probably got double the expenses in
Mm.
terms of home accommodation, all that type of stuff.
It's not like your income just went up.
No,
Is it?
exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of those things I think that need due consideration, and I think
Mm.
what blokes should ultimately do, and if it's civilized enough, I think when should guys stay, when should they go? I think if there's safety concerns or genuine risks,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Um, but I think in a ideal situation, you would want to try to make some arrangements, formal arrangements in place before you go.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
speak
So
to
get something
uh,
signed
get
off.
something in writing, get some legal advice that supports a plan, get some mutual agreement in writing that supports the arrangements. Because if you leave and you don't have that in place, anything
Mm.
formalized,
Yeah.
it's very difficult. The other
Okay.
thing that guys need to consider when they leave the home,
Mm.
the person that's occupying the family home, they inevitably become the primary carer,
Okay.
even on an interim basis,
Yeah. Yeah.
unless a court would dictate otherwise through access and things like that. The thing that guys need to understand is once you leave the home, you don't have a legal right to see your kids, right? If you're not the primary carer without a formal court order.
Wow.
Exactly.
Can you explain? Can you repeat that? Like
Okay.
that's.
So if a guy separates,
Mm-hmm.
leaves the home,
Yeah.
right, and then decides, okay, in a week's time, I want to see my children next
Yeah.
weekend. They're my kids.
Yeah. You still own the house,
You still own
presumably.
the house, even if it doesn't matter if the house is in your name. It's who's occupying the house, right? So you've left the house.
Yeah.
You want to see your kids next weekend. If
Yeah.
the partner or the wife says, I don't think so,
Mm.
you can't really do much about that. And if you go to the police, as an example, and
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
I want to see my kids, my wife is restricting me from seeing my children,
Yep.
do you know the first thing the police are going to say? Have you got an order in place? Have you got a family order, a parenting order in place?
So okay, we just said a second ago that
Yeah.
if I have in writing from someone like I don't know, one of your community centre legals or law
That's
access
different.
or something.
You're talking about a formal order. I'm talking
No,
about
no, 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 not a formal order, just a something that or GPT racked up for me. That both parties have
if
signed and said,
if
Wednesday to Thursday, Tuesday, Monday,
if
whatever.
you've got a signed order, an enforceable order, then the police can enforce that.
But that's not an order. That's just two parties just saying, hey.
Correct. Correct. But they're
So
going to
right, so that piece of paper that both parties have signed, realistically,
the the the,
you
the
you can't get
police the
access to your own
police
house or
will
your own
only
kids.
the police will only get involved if you have
Mm.
a formal family order in place.
So that's from the courts.
Parenting order.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, or it could be from the Relationships Australia, whatever. But you've got parenting orders in place,
Mm.
right? And they can help you to enforce those. Ninety
Mate,
five
that
percent,
sounds like
right?
this is a bigger topic.
Yeah,
That's pretty big.
it is. But it's just you got to highlight this because it's part of the
Yeah.
implications of guys fall into this trap where they think that because I'm a dad, I
Mm.
immediately have access to those kids when I want, and it's not the case. It's
Yeah.
not the
Okay.
case. Not without an order in place. So
Okay.
if
And like
if
that totally makes sense on on I guess on little kids,
yeah,
like on your zeros to probably primary school, all the way
but
through to
Kieran,
primary school.
when a guy's getting divorced, mostly within the 40 to 45 year age bracket.
Right.
So what does that tell you? How old do you think the kids are?
Yeah.
They're probably going to be fairly young,
Yeah.
maybe hitting the preteens, but they're going to be young kids.
Yeah.
Most they
Yeah. So, but the older kids could presumably,
if a kid's over 18, they can do whatever they want.
yeah.
Older kids generally have more of a say, and if the kids want to operate under a different arrangement, that's
Mm.
okay too.
Mm.
The courts would look at that, but
Yeah, but you've got to wait till your court date. You've got to wait for all of these things.
exactly,
Wow.
exactly.
Okay.
So
Now,
again,
so handshake deals, forget it.
so
Um,
yeah, handshake deals. Don't worry about that.
Relationship Australia,
Rela-
something that they approve.
yeah,
Would that be
well,
suitable?
100%. I think that I would be, before I'd be moving out, I'd be speaking to a lawyer. I'd
Yep.
be speaking to a family relationships to try and get some sort of arrangements in place before you leave the house. At least
And
you've got
family
some
relationships is a government thing, is
yes,
it?
yes.
Yeah.
It's still. I mean, it's government funded. There is a cost, but it's a fairly negligible cost to engage family relationships, and it's certainly a lot cheaper than engaging going through
Yeah.
lawyers, who's
Yeah.
going to
Fair.
cost you
Okay.
thousands or tens of thousands at the end of the day.
Presumably, they've got some sort of templates as well that could work.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's around that. Um, what else do guys need to consider um, around financial, for example?
Hmm.
You're the you're the chartered accountant. um, so I think it's really about, if you're married, generally you've got your finances intermeshed. So it's how do you start separating your finances?
Hmm.
Um, so I would say the first step is to set up your own bank account.
Yep.
Uh,
Presumably, this is whilst you're still in the house, right? So you sort of made the conscious
yeah,
decision that, hey, this isn't going to work, and I need to do something else. This is the advice you're giving right now, right?
100%.
Okay.
So opening up your own bank account.
Yep.
Um, the other thing you want to consider is other accounts that you've got. If you've got mortgage offset accounts, joint
Mm.
accounts, things like that,
Yep.
freezing the ability to redraw
Yep.
off those. I think some men get taken to, or I can say men
Wow.
and women, but people get
Yeah.
taken to the dry cleaners as soon as they
Yeah.
separate. A lot of couples, individuals
Yeah.
within these arrangements, they start
Yeah.
hitting the accounts.
And the
So
credit card,
and
non-stop.
the
Yeah.
credit and the credit card. So you want to either cancel those credit cards, put freezes on those credit cards, take off, freeze the mortgage offset,
Yep.
get your own account. Try to start separating out those joint bank accounts as well. That's some sort of tactical decisions that men need to consider.
Yep.
And then it's really for men, they need to start looking at their expenses as
Yeah.
well, their month to month. When guys get separated, as you know through your friends, even the guys that are doing well, generally, men, it's a real back to square one for a lot of blokes. Whether you're doing well or doing poorly,
Mm.
a lot of men tend to land in the same place after divorce, which is kind of ground zero. Um, is
Yesterday
that a
I was
fair
offered.
assessment, mate? Because I know we've got a whole broad range of friends and di-
Mm.
different levels of affluence. Um, but divorce is a real equalizer, isn't it? For
Yeah.
men, is that
They
your?
start from $1. Just the other day, I always get offered like a whatever they are, an espresso coffee or something,
Yeah.
and one of my mates said, "Oh, mate, Nespresso's out, instance in."
Yeah.
So that's all. That's what I'm offering, and I went, "Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, no worries,
yeah,
whatever,
that's
whatever."
okay. Yeah, that's okay.
Instant coffee, yeah,
Yeah,
still caffeinated though.
yeah,
So
absolutely. So I think it's really it's a time to be humble.
yeah,
I think separate.
cancel your subs. You
Sorry.
don't need Fox. You don't need Foxtel.
Oh
Blah
well,
blah blah.
that's what
Blah,
I'm
all of the
saying,
stuff.
and I know
Yeah.
friends and family that have been through that, and I think what one of the best advice you go through the last 12 weeks, 3 months bank statements, download those, highlight any non-essential
Mm.
expenses, and just rip through that.
Yeah.
Just anything to do with subscriptions or anything like that. Might even have to put a pause on, even memberships and things like that. You
Yep.
just need to be a little bit more creative in terms of how you're managing your day-to-day expenses.
And
Um,
the other ones that you have in terms of expenses um, that you must keep for whatever reason,
mm,
call them up and contact their retention officer
Yeah.
through customer support and say, look, I may need to leave you here because I'm looking for a better deal.
Yeah, oh,
Yeah,
absolutely. And
that's worked
if you do
well.
that enough, you can save hundreds a
Yeah,
month once you
yeah,
do
and
that.
you're about to find with the doubling of the rental that every kid's going
Absolutely.
to count,
And
right?
it may
Yeah.
even mean again, downgrading things like your vehicle to
Mm.
something smaller, something still
What did
reliable.
you get, JP?
Well,
What car did you end up with
Kate.
when you first started?
I had the Subaru Forester,
Mm.
and then I downgraded to a purple Mazda 121, which had been technically written off. It had
Yep.
hail damage, it had dents all over the place. Um, no tinting on the windows. I looked like, for 2 years, I looked like a lesbian driving around in this car. And without the tinting, I would just be a set of lights trying to cover myself.
I've seen
Um,
the memes for the same thing for Foresters, though, just to
but
be.
but yeah, but I have to say, it's still I still got dates. So it's just men can be hopeful. It's not about the car. You can still get dates even with the purple Mazda 121. It
Yep.
just means you need to focus on your personality and your charisma because you won't have anything materially to offer at this point. So it's going
There's
to be
no other
all
distraction.
about making women laugh,
Yep.
um, and and trying to be as fit as possible because you have nothing else to bring to the table at this point in your life.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not bundles of cash going out as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. So that's a couple. Anything else from your side on the financial aspects? I think getting
they're
your
pretty basic to kick off with, aren't they?
yeah.
The other one from a financial perspective, there was one, and it's not really financial, but one of my mates was married to a international person and their kids, and so she still had a home overseas
Mm,
with family. And one of the things was he secured uh, the kids' passports,
okay.
right?
Mm,
And as part of that process, and then I don't know whether that's right, wrong, indifferent, who's primary,
mm,
all of those things, but I'll just
mm,
say that's what I have seen,
mm.
and
The other
I
thing
guess
from
that's
financial,
a mental risk to him.
yeah,
So
absolutely. The other thing that needs to be considered, the big elephant in the room, is child support.
okay,
So another financial aspect that men need to consider in terms of expense is once they leave the home, if they've, you know, there could be additional, and most likely there will be child support that will need to be paid. So
do you have to
again,
pay that immediately? Like
sorry.
how does it work? Like,
Well,
presumably, child
if you
support
don't,
only happens
if,
after you get through.
no, no,
No,
no.
okay,
As soon as you leave the home,
yep, yep,
you can do it one of two ways, really. You can
mm,
enter into a private agreement, which is essentially you discuss and say, just pay me $250 a week,
hmm,
whatever it is.
per child.
Yeah,
Yep,
well, or whatever. No, it's not. It's generally just whatever is the child support. So if you got two, three kids, if
yep,
if it's whatever, it's whatever both parties are happy with and
okay,
can agree on. That's the
yep,
best way to do it, really. So
okay,
if they decide, $300-400 a week for the family, I'll pay you $1,500-1,600 a month, and we'll just not worry about getting a formal child support arrangement in place. You
yep,
can do it that way, but with all good intentions, as you go down the road of separation and divorce, it
mm,
will start to get inevitably a bit dirtier,
mm,
nastier. Once that happens, that's when things start to be formalized.
yeah, okay,
And one party might say, "You're not paying me enough," or the other
hmm,
party might say, "I'm paying you too much." Well,
yep,
let's go to the referee. Let's go to child support.
hmm,
Put our cards on the table. You put all your assets, income, what
yep,
you're earning, your last year's taxable income, and let's let child support decide on who should be paying what based on those arrange.
When you say child support, is that Centrelink? Is that at the Australian government?
That's the
Centrelink?
federal government.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a federal. It's a different. It's not Centrelink. It's the Child
Oh,
Support
okay.
Agency. It's another federal government
Yeah. Okay.
um,
Agency.
organisation. So,
Yeah.
um, so yeah. So most people will hand over to the referee. One of the benefits of that, it creates a bit of an arm's length relationship between both parties,
Mm.
because you've got child support sitting in the middle and the guy is paying. Well, I say the guy because inevitably most of the time it's going to be the guy, but the other party, that's the party that's paying child support, they will they'll pay the child support agency directly, and then child support will funnel that through as payments to the other party. So that'll create that arm's length relationship. I like it because I think it's cleaner. And I
Yeah.
think when you're moving forward, you do want to create those arm's length relationships from your ex and not have that constant engagement. Because
Yeah.
I think down the track, particularly if you're looking at repartnering,
Yeah.
you don't want a situation where you're actively involved with your ex on a day to day. And from my experience and seeing guys around me and even in my own life, it doesn't bode well with the other party.
Yeah.
When they
Yeah.
see you in this, constant relationship with your ex, it's kind of like you're stuck in this past
It's still
life
there. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
not going there. So I think I'm all
Okay.
about trying to keep things as amicable as possible, but creating those arm's length relationships is, I think,
Do you know the maximum of what childcare support would be in
child
Australia?
support.
Yeah.
I have no clue.
Okay.
There are caps on it, but it's pretty
Yeah.
decent.
Okay.
It's
That'll
pretty deep.
be. I'm sure this is another topic we'll go through, like
Of
financial
course,
type.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Look,
this is just still triage. You're just
we're
scratching the
still
surface of this.
we're still triaging, but I
Yeah.
think these things need to be at least put on the table, and it's something
Yeah. Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
guys in our audience to think about. What about the emotional side? How do we manage the grief, stop the emotional reactivity from sabotaging those next steps? I've got a one of the things I'm a real advocate for,
Mm-hmm.
because I have been through this before, and I've experienced a whole range of different emotions, and I've fumbled, in many different ways. I think that I made every single mistake that you could possibly make in all of these areas.
Okay.
So, so I was,
So this will be another one we scratch the surface on.
yeah,
There you
yeah,
go.
100%. Yeah, that's like a
Yeah.
5-part series where
Yeah.
you could actually go through all my mistakes. But one of the things that I learned, and I think it's really applicable to guys, because you can go on. It's a very depressing time,
Mm.
guys, because you know when when you have something in your life that's a major thing. Say, for example, it's your career. If something
Mm.
changes in that, that's a big event.
Mm.
When you get separated, it's like you've got every aspect of your life thrown into disarray.
Yeah.
And I think this is why smart guys, the smartest of guys struggle in this, because most people aren't used to having or have experienced having their whole life uprooted.
I spoke to one of my mates
Mm,
who separated. He had beautiful beach home, beautiful kids, still does,
mm,
but went through that separation, and he ended up having to live in a studio garage of no one he knew, but local neighborhood. And he did say like how depressing that
mm,
cycle was, from having a great setup, believing that you had a great setup, and obviously not everything was great at home,
mm,
but the how he probably judged himself at the time
mm,
changed immediately, and that did take a long time to try to
mm,
pull himself back out of.
mm. And a smart guy, right?
Oh, smart guy, yeah, yeah. He and honestly, he's gone on to do great things, and very happy, great relationship with his kids. So
Mm,
he absolutely he's outstanding.
mm,
So, but I just remember that point. One
mm,
minute you're living in this amazing beach house, the next minute the
100%.
best you can do for the money is in a garage studio.
Yeah.
like living in a garage.
Yeah. And you do think that when you see guys that are successful, I guess from external measures,
Mm.
outside looking in, you think, oh, this guy will be fine.
Yeah.
And then you just see the whole situation unravel
Mm.
that person. And we touched on this last episode. It's not an IQ game, it's an EQ game.
Mm.
And it's about emotional resilience, and being able to really control your emotions during this time. And one of
So
the
your quick tips, what are your quick tips to
quick tips for me
come
is
back to this
that
one as
I
well?
think as a bloke, you're taught to be very stoic,
Mm-hmm.
not to show too much emotion, and just to grind your teeth and sort of just charge through these situations. They're very emotional time, and particularly if you've got children, because that's a whole nother level that can really snap a guy in half. And I've found from my own experience and speaking to other guys and seeing a lot of guys go through this, it's really the kids. The kids is what unravels them the most. And that's the thing they find emotionally really difficult to come to terms with, that change in the relationship, the distancing, the cutoff of the communication, all of those things. You can deal with a lot of the other external factors, even the changing of accommodation and, the downgrading and things like that. I mean, I've downgraded. Kieran, I was in a studio where I could open my refrigerator from my bed. Just to give you an idea of how small this thing was. Again, very humbling. What I will say is that as a guy, give yourself the opportunity to grieve first, right? Give yourself permission to experience the emotions of what's going on. And that might mean having a cry, ringing up your mum, ringing up your best mate, harassing everybody that you know and love, and whinging to them. It might mean, going to get a family block of chocolate and a bag of Cheetos and a 6-pack of beer, and allow yourself to be depressed. Right? That's okay. It's normal. The other thing I'd say is, and the reason I think that's important is because I think we all need to be able to feel that. The only difference is, I would say, is that, or the caveat to that is, you need to put some governance around it. You need to put a time limit and a cutoff.
Yeah.
For me, my adage is 24 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
a lot of phone calls on that.
No. That's my general principle. So if I say
in normal
life, I give myself 24 hours, because if it's not too crazy, but it's impacting me, I still allow myself to go through that routine of feeling down for a day, but I have a very strict limit around that. For something like this, it's up to the guy to decide. It's not up for me to decide for people. All I would say is, have some thought process around what will that look like for you? How much time will I give myself permission to feel this way? And what date will I decide that I'm going to wake up and now I'm going to start charging ahead?
Yeah. Okay. That makes complete sense. Write it down, put it in a book, something you go back to, or something like that, something you can be accountable to.
Yeah, journal. It doesn't all have to be bad habits, but I think talking to the right people.
Yeah, and like we said last week, if you have a great mate, that also.
You have a great mate.
You got one.
It's not, again, we touched on this last week. It's not a numbers game.
No,
it's just about quality. If you got the one person in your life that you can have a quality conversation, that's got your back, that's the guy that you want to be talking to. Harass that guy, because that guy's got your back, and if he's a good mate, He'll be with you. He'll take the calls, and he'll help you to get through it like you would for them. Right? That's what friendship is all about. Anything else for you on the emotional
Just
for what you?
maybe you like if it's really bad in your head, make sure you seek advice from your GP or something like that. I would say
Absolutely.
and maybe
EAP
so
too.
at least you have those things. Like that'd be a caveat for
Yeah.
to make sure you've got that.
Another thing, EAP, like those employee assistance programs. A lot of people have run those through work, through
I've
business.
never heard that. What is that called?
So
Sorry.
it's called employee assistance program. A lot of corporates run through. A lot of workplaces have got that. So something to investigate with your workplace if you've got it. Generally, they'll have it's to support workers by offering them free counselling service.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. For things that are happening in their social life.
It could be work related.
Sure.
It could not be work related.
Hmm.
A lot of it, sometimes they'll extend it to other family members as well.
Okay.
So if you've got a child that's potentially struggling, maybe you can seek some free support counselling through your workplace. I would definitely see what is on offer. You can go to your GP, look at doing up a mental health plan that could give you potentially free or heavily subsidised psychology sessions, just to sort of get you back on track. So we looked at
delete your social media.
Get off social media. That's a disaster. Don't look at your partner's social media. That's like, get rid of that straight away. Cut ties on that would be my suggestion. If you can't cut ties, delete the apps. Social media is not going to serve you during this time. Real relationships are going to serve you during this time. I would also recommend focusing on quality sleep. And I know it's a difficult time. Guys are stressed out, but as much as possible, try and set yourself up for a good sleep routine, good sleep hygiene, getting to bed, waking up around the same time, trying to stay off the booze too much, particularly late at night. And, just stay off the coffee late at night as well. Stay off the devices late at night. The
GP may also say sneak a little bit of magnesium or something, right?
Sneak some magnesium. We can all do supplements. That's another episode. Okay, I love the supplements, right? I don't want to turn this into
nothing like a new.
This will become a Peter Attia podcast or Andrew Huberman.
Be on here one day.
Yeah, but without all the professionalism and the lighting and all that. Yeah. So we've got the emotional, physical. I know that's a big one for you. You're a big fan of the physical side and moving the body as a remedy for stress. I'm also a big advocate. I
think the science is coming back for that as well.
What's that?
I think the science is coming back for that as well. You start lifting and cardio, VO2, and there'll be something happening at a cellular molecular level there that no doubt in the future they'll have locked that down, that it's what we're meant to do to repair ourselves. So
absolutely,
presumably that also helps with your mental state, doing those things. And as you said, it helps pick up the girls at some point.
Well, when you're ready to get back out there on some of those despicable dating apps, then yeah, absolutely. Like I said, you're not going to have a nice place to offer or a nice car, so at least have yourself a good body. That's about all you can control at this point,
or at least start.
At least start
on the journey.
100%. So I guess for the physical stuff, you're right. I think the message is just get moving. Don't make it complicated. Even if it's just a simple walk in the middle of the day, if it's getting your 10,000 steps up, that's a great start. Guys around our vintage or those going through separation, like I said, statistics demonstrate that, it's guys in that sort of 40 to 45 range that are generally considering or in the process of getting separated, divorced. That's the time that you want to be starting to lift weights, get into some sort of a strength routine, A couple of dumbbells is all you need. It doesn't need to be complicated. You don't need advanced routines. You don't need bougie Virgin Active memberships. You just got to get in there with a couple of dumbbells, do some push-ups, do some sit-ups, go for a run, go to the oval, do some sprints. It's not complicated. It's just effort.
Yeah.
And I think anything beyond that, I think the more we complicate, the more we're probably just procrastinating on it. So I think the key is just get outdoors and start.
Yeah.
Just start
Yeah.
and
Start and discipline. You'd rather have discipline than motivation, to be
yeah,
honest.
absolutely. And then, in terms of diet, just keep your diet relatively clean,
Mm.
high in protein, and make sure you're getting plenty of veggies, fiber, all that kind of stuff. It's going to help you physically, but it's also, I think, more importantly at this point, it's the mental.
Yeah.
Because you're in a bit of a emotional mental state, and
Yeah.
I think all of these things are going to add value for your mental game, right? So it's got a two-prong.
Get in the surf, go for a bike ride, do any
100%.
of
Get
those
in the
things.
salt water.
And actually, all of those things are good that you can do with a mate that don't involve alcohol, right? So
Yeah.
that's also a good.
Oh,
point.
100%. It's good. It's good, clean, fun.
Mm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um,
What logistical stuff have you got for us? Like, what do you?
Logistical stuff, I think, is really going to be around. Um, I think we need to start looking at scheduling time with children. How you're going to manage those sort of drop off, pick up arrangements, trying to get some structure around that, setting up maybe a joint calendar. If you're on iPhone, for example, set up a joint calendar where you can start to schedule in some time with your
You mean a joint calendar with the kids, or a joint calendar with your spouse or
uh,
ex-spouse?
probably a joint calendar with the kids, depending
Okay.
upon their age.
Yep.
I think if they're really young, then maybe it's a joint calendar with the ex.
Yep.
It just makes good logistical sense. There's also some parenting apps out there, Kieran.
Yeah.
I won't give off any names, but
Mm.
I would encourage people to consider that. They are used as communication tools. They're also used for organizing, logistics and pickups and time with the kids and things like that. I think that.
You
Sorry.
Sorry, I was about to say one thing that um, you told me probably 10 years ago, I
Mm,
reckon, which was around calling the children every day.
yeah.
Wow, that stuck with me.
Mm,
In a way, and for the listeners, we used to work together,
mm,
and Josh would say, "Look, can we stop this meeting? I just want to make a couple of quick calls." I
mm,
said, "Fine." I went back to work and the rest. And you would speak to your kids pretty well every day,
mm,
um, uh, without fail. I don't know if that was 100% you were doing that every day, but to me, I stopped and sort of looked at myself and went, "Wait a sec. There are a lot of days I can't even see the kids because I'm
mm,
leaving early for work or having to travel for
mm,
work or doing all these things or have some social engagement. So I'm not home when they're at home and things." And I actually haven't even spoken to my own children, even though we all live in the same house.
mm,
And I thought, that is really, really good. That's a really good behavior or discipline you put into yourself.
mm.
Um, yeah, and I think it's something that you probably can go further into as to, I don't know how that works for young children. Like, it's easy enough for, my
Yeah,
kids are
I think children
like
of
10 years ago.
any age, it's the regularity of the contact, particularly when you can't be there physically. I think the
Mm,
phone calls are absolutely critical, and making sure that you're consistent. It's a bit like exercise. You can have a very long conversation, or you can exercise, consistently every day. So I think for kids need to hear the other parent's voice regularly.
yeah,
FaceTimes was brilliant for,
yeah,
because at least you get a video, kind of closes the gap a little bit more. But that regularity, even if it's for a couple of minutes, I
mm,
would do that, and then sometimes 25% of the times they didn't pick up the phone, but that's okay,
yeah, yeah,
because you know what they saw? They saw a missed call from me.
Yeah.
Even if they didn't pick up the phone, that's on their terms. All I
Yeah.
could decide is what's in my sphere of control.
Mm.
My sphere of control is I can make a call. What's in their sphere of control? Are they going to take the call? How long do they want to talk? A lot of that's dictated by the kids. And sometimes it's awkward. You know, kids at different ages, sometimes they want to talk to you. Other times you can tell they're there, but they want to be off the phone within a minute.
Yeah.
And
How
that's
was school? Good.
yeah, good. And some days it felt like I was in a police interrogation because I would just be dropping. It's like they had just spoken to their lawyer before I called, and they were told say nothing
Don't say
or
don't say anything that could
don't
incriminate
yes
you.
or no's. Don't go beyond yes or no. And that's how some of these conversations played out. And that's okay. It makes for awkward. You go, oh, tell me about your day. Good. Okay, what'd you get up to? Nothing. Okay, this is going well.
That'd be every bloke in Australia.
Yeah,
So
100%.
that's
So
fine.
sometimes,
But it's about that discipline, mate. I think that's excellent. But that's sort of structuring your day, right? Part of
well,
your own calendar of things that you want to
it
get
is,
done.
but I also
But-
think that, Kieran, it pays dividends in the long run.
Oh,
Because
100%.
as kids get older, like you and I, they will reflect on their parenting differently at different ages. And the things that they don't appreciate when they're super young, as they get older, they'll go, hang on, he called me every day.
Yeah.
Every day he called me. I didn't pick up sometimes because I was being a ratty teenager, but he called every day.
I think that's great advice for everybody, regardless of if you're in the same home. So
Yeah, 100% difficult.
So, is there any other sort of logistical things that
Yes,
you would
change all
do?
your passwords.
Or great one.
Change your
Great.
passwords. Set up a new email.
Yep.
Set up a new email, 100%.
Yep.
And you go in and change every password that you know. And
Log you out of every device you've ever
log out
owned.
of every device, everything. Even I've seen all sorts of. I've experienced it
Yeah.
myself. I lent my iPad when my daughter was very young. I said, "You can have Daddy's iPad," because she wanted to play some stuff. So I gave it to her for a couple of weeks, not realizing that I still had my email on there.
Yeah, it's Apple ID sitting in there.
Well, I had my email fully exposed.
Yeah.
Because it was logged in. I didn't think about that. But
You know, the other
what
part
a
of that,
treasure trove for the other person, right?
well, from the other thing from that is if you've done that, then on Find My iPhone, which you've got as an app on your iPad, you'd be able to see where you are from every device, right?
Yeah, so all of those things, that's what I'm saying. You don't
Try to log out.
you don't realize how exposed you are.
Yeah, wow. No, I wouldn't pick that.
100%.
Okay.
Even and little things, even into
When you're banking, presumably.
Oh, no, first, that's the first thing. The financial is the first thing you want to reset, and then move back to all of your confidential, your OneDrives, your Google Drives, your iClouds, everything, and just log out of your Chrome. Log out of your Chrome, out of every device that you possibly can. And change that password. Because some good, I know I talk about Apple because I'm on that kind of ecosystem, but they've got built-in password managers to make it really easy for you to reset and come up with really strong, unique passwords to make it easy sort of to go through that process. Yeah.
So that was good around the mobile phone thing. What other parenting, to stay present whilst you're going through the emotional, spaghetti mess.
That
everyone will go
I
through.
think,
But,
I
bloke
think
and girl.
the cardinal rule, from my perspective, and it will serve you so well in the long run. Do not badmouth your ex under any circumstances. That is a disaster. No good will ever come of it. Okay. And all you're doing is polluting your relationship with your children. Because guys and all partners in a relationship need to understand you have the relationship and you have the parenting, and they are two different things. And if the relationship doesn't survive, you've got to be able to draw a line between the relationship and the parenting aspects. And it can be very enticing to, particularly when you feel like you're being railroaded, to start to badmouth your ex on the basis that you think you're scoring brownie points with your kids, and that the worse they think of her, the better they'll think of you. And it's the opposite, because at the end of the day, kids want to love both their parents. They love both their parents. Okay. No kid wants to see a parent bad mouthing the other parent. They may not say anything.
Everyone knows this. I think you just have to send yourself back to how old you were as, an 8, 10, 12. You sort of remember every one of your parents' fights. You remember whenever that you saw or were present at, right? Then you also remember when either of them were mean to each other. And that really sticks, because you want to defend the other one against that. So
100%.
what you're saying is complete sense.
Yeah.
So that should be the rule according to JP, mate. That's almost should be up number one, because it's so hard. It would be so hard to do.
Is, because the thing is, you're going to go through this process, and sometimes it's like, I want to use the term shit sandwich on top of shit sandwich. And it feels like, the other party. I'm not just talking about guys. I'm talking about, I'm sure women feel the same way, but there's a period at which you feel like you're public enemy number one, and that this person is on a mission to destroy you. And it's so conflicting emotionally, because that person is also the mother of your children. So there's a absolute respect there. I always respect the children and their mother as the mother, irrespective of what's going on. But
and she may be an excellent mother, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just that the two of you are not destined to continue on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you got to really draw that line around that, and make that your credence, that you'll never badmouth the other person. If you feel tempted, go call up a mate and do it there.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you got to get it off your chest, get it off your chest.
It's not even the bad mouth. Sorry, bad mouth is huge, but it's the reaction to things as well. Something doesn't go your way because the ex did something and the kids are in the car. You can't go, bloody hell.
Yeah.
No, you've got to be stoic in relation to that.
You've got to be stoic, and you've got to be disciplined. And this is all. See, this is part of the EQ that we're talking about. It's an EQ game, right? This is where the discipline comes in. You've got to be disciplined in all aspects, physically, mentally, emotionally. You've got to be able to control yourself. And I would say the healthiest thing for a guy to do is really just accept what's going on with grace.
Hard.
It's a hard one.
Because you may feel totally wronged. Totally wrong.
100%.
Something that came out.
And the reason I say that accept it with grace is because any other way is not going to serve you well. And it won't. The quicker you can, and not only that, if you accept it with grace, you're going to make much better decisions. Because once you take the emotion out of the situation, and this is one thing I think that we haven't touched on, just as a philosophy of when you separate, you are changing the nature of the relationship with the other person. During the course of the relationship, there's an emotional attachment there, and it's a very specific type of relationship. When you separate, that relationship inevitably changes. It's more of you have to see it more as a business partnership. Your business is the children, and you need to be strategic, just like you would at work. and you need to be arm's length, just like you would at work. This is why people have got such good control in their work lives, but terrible in their personal lives, because it's the emotion.
Yeah.
In work, because it's arm's length, they can control their tongue. They can make good, hard decisions. All of these things, all these attributes, they can bring to the table at work, but they can't bring home with them. Because
you're saying they should bring those same talents. You know, you don't go off at your boss when you're at work, right?
Correct.
You don't go berserk,
correct,
and scream and
exactly.
carry on.
So you really want to look at the relation. Exactly. So it's about, in your mind, mentally, emotionally, saying, I'm now in a business relationship with this person. This separation is business, which means the logistics. I'm just going to go through this methodically. I'm not going to be emotional. And that way, if you do feel like you're being slighted, just like you would at work, you'd be saying, not really happy about that, but I'll deal with it with a nice email and we'll get to the bottom of it. But I'm not going to invest emotionally into what's going on here. I'm going to be very strategic and very methodical about it. And that will serve you well to be like that. Yeah.
Just a quick one. In terms of parenting, what are the stats on, you know, the father ending up at a 50-50 or the father ending up as primary carer from the courts? What is in Australia? I'm not sure.
I've got some stats here. So where have we got? Shared care, where children spend 35 to 40% of nights with their father, occurs in about 10% of cases. 10%.
Why? Because we get more? Like because fathers get more?
Less. Equal time. Time. Because people go, oh, it's 2025. Everyone's getting 50-50. Really?
Yeah.
No. 50-50 occurs in 9% of cases. 9%. So whilst there's a perception that, yeah, it's 50, it's not. It's not.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Only about 11% of separated fathers are the primary custodial parent. So, okay. So 89% of women are the primary carers in separations, right? Who's leaving the house, Kieran? Men.
Yeah.
I keep going back to it. When you leave the house, you're giving up that primary carer relationship straight away.
Yes.
Yeah? And fathers gain sole custody in about 10% of cases, right? And shared care, where children spend 35 to 40% of nights with their father, occurs in about 10% of cases. So there you go.
I reckon that has shocked women and men.
Of course it would.
On those numbers.
Yeah. So there's, again, the statistics don't lie unless they're in government. But anyway, but generally speaking, the perception of care and what's going on and the reality paints a very different picture.
Yeah, even though kids are at school or for majority of the time, even though the kids at school or whatever else is happening. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
It's where they sleep, presumably. That would be the definition, like of how much time?
On nights of care?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nights of care. So nights of care translates to, so for example, if you see, I'll give an example because it's close to off the top of my head. Yeah. But if you're saying you see your kids every second weekend, you've got 14% care.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
86% is with the other person.
Yeah.
That's going to affect your relationship with your kid. It's going to affect your child support outcomes, all those things, right? But it's very difficult too when you've got distance between you and the primary carer. It just makes the logistics. So another thing for men to think about, if they are temporarily relocating, just be careful where you live. Don't put yourself in a situation where you're creating too much of a gap between you and the primary carer, because it does make the logistics a lot harder. And when they're looking at best interests of the children, the courts are not going to want to have the kids going back and forth an hour each way.
Yeah, fair
Okay,
call.
so things that you need to consider when you're making these temporary arrangements is what is this going to mean for
Yeah,
future?
close to the school or close to the
Yeah.
ex or yeah. Okay.
Um, I'd say a couple of things because I know we got to wrap up really soon.
Yep.
Um, don't make any major life decisions in the first 60 days. Okay,
Okay.
you're not in a position to do that. So try and keep
Do you
this
mean as soon as you move out?
as
Like
soon as
because
you move
people
out
have made the
because
decision.
you are not in the right mental headspace to be
Yeah.
making major decisions. Give yourself that time to do all these things for 30 days, reset, recalibrate. When you're in a good place,
Mm.
then if you want to make some more meaningful decisions after that, by all means. But I would err against guys doing that in the first instance.
Well,
Um,
all of this advice you've just given so far
mm,
is really it's regardless of if you have children or not, right? Except for the parenting bit there that
mm,
you were just talking about. Realistically, all of these things that you're talking about, it's that separation of from your ex. You know, the
yeah.
mindset, the financial, the emotional, the physical, um, yeah, and the legal.
Mm,
Obviously, all of those things are regardless of children. You know,
absolutely.
these are things you have to consider.
Oh, 100%. And you want to consider you when you're considering major life decisions, you want to do it from a healthy place, like anybody.
Yeah.
Um,
You're not your relationship status.
no, 100%, 100%. Can I tell you a funny story about
Go.
friendships? Because the thing that absolutely floored me the most, I think I have told you this before, but I'm going to end on this story just to kind of plug home some of the realities of when you do split up,
Yep.
and particularly around isolation. I was living. I'm from Sydney. I was living in a regional area when I was married, so about an hour or so away from Sydney. Um, a lot of the friendships that I had prior to that had kind of fallen by the wayside because of the distance. And then what ended up happening was I ended up forming a lot of relationships, almost nearly all of my relationships were um, off the back of the relationship. So these were friends that my wife at the time had.
Hmm.
And I would kind of join in on those friendships, and the partners of those girls became my friends.
Yep.
And I had about half a dozen of those, and we would go out from time to time and play squash together and go on bike rides together and everything else like that.
Mm.
And then when I split up, you know how many calls I got from those guys? Zero.
Wow.
Not one call from one guy.
Mm.
It was radio silence. So I realized a couple of things. They weren't my friends.
Mm.
They were fair weather friends, or whatever you want to call them, but they certainly weren't my friends. They were my wife's friends, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of clarified what the relationship really was, but it also creates a loneliness because, and a lot of guys experience loneliness because a lot of their friendships while they're married is these cohabitation friendships that are formed, and they're not their friends. They're friends within the context of the relationship,
Yeah.
and they lose all of that. So I would say to guys, just be mindful of that may happen to you. So if it does, it's just a reality that you have to deal with. But when you look towards the future, make sure that it's good, and it's good to have friends as a couple, no doubt. But make sure you've got your friends with your guys and your people, so that if anything happens in your life, you got people in your corner. And I think that's an important message, that you got to have both. You can't just have relationship friends. You got to have your own friends as well. She's got to have her friends as well.
Do you know what that relationship, friends? I'm sure the
Mm.
females would feel the same thing too, right? It's almost hey,
Oh, 100%.
is it a divorce of a friendship groups as well?
Yeah,
You
but
know, some side
most
with
women tend to have more stronger friendships,
mm,
women. so that when they're going through separation, they have a better support network than what most guys do. That's just statistics. That's the reality.
Yeah.
Okay. We've gone through a lot. This has been a good episode. I've really been looking forward to this. This is really in the spirit of what we're talking about. And my hope is that our listeners can get, if you can get one thing out of this, I think hopefully it served you well. I think there was a lot that we covered off. We're only scratching the surface. Like I said, this is triage. We're getting out the first aid kit. We're trying to bring some obvious things to the table, so that you can think about things when you're making your decisions over the next sort of 30, 60 days. What we're going to focus on next week is looking at those guys that are considering separation.
Okay.
We're going to look at all those different things that they need to think about before they take the plunge, if they take the plunge, and give some food for thought, because I think a lot of men that I see make these decisions in a very rash way, and they're not thinking about it holistically, and they're not thinking about all the other things that they need to consider first and work on within themselves before they make those decisions. So we're going to drop a whole bunch of nuggets, hopefully, next week. So I'm really looking forward to that. Any closing comments from you, mate, before we...
Mate, you've got a lot of morsels on the steak dinner.
Yeah.
Today. And yeah, thanks. It was good things to think about. All of those you can go really deep on.
Oh,
so
and
look forward to chewing down on those.
We will. I think this, like I said, first few weeks we're really just trying to triage here. I'm really looking forward to really deep diving, because any of those you could run an episode on, and we want to be able to do that for people that want to deep dive into very specific topics. And then as we sort of move out, the hope is we can bring on some guests, some financial advisors, some legal advisors, some psychologists, some life coaches, some dating advisors, to get men sort of really going. But this has been great. Thank you for joining me, taking time out of your schedule again, mate. And I'll be posting this up. It's going to be better than the first one, which was, well, we didn't post up the video because it was shite, to be fair. So hopefully this one will be a little bit more professional once we upload it.
Excellent, mate. Thanks again, and have a great weekend.
You too, mate. Thank you. Take care.
Yeah, bye.